Hello and welcome. This is Jennifer, and as always, I'm glad you're here. Today I'm sharing a fun way to create inside pop-up surprise cards. Now, I've done many different types of pop-up card videos in the past, and I'll link to a playlist if you want to see some others. But what's special about today's is that this card, when you open it and lay it flat open, the inside stands up, so you can put it on display like this. Another reason I like this type of pop-up is you can pretty much put anything on the pop-up feature. So you could put a little gift card, any die cuts, any stamped images. So it really just allows you to use your other products in a creative way. So I have a few examples for you and then a couple of bonus cards that are just flat cards using the same products. Now let's start with this birthday card first. I wanted to show you what the end card looks like. It's simple from the outside, but then when you open it, all these candles pop up. This makes a great card to put on display. You just lay the card flat onto your desk and the candles are standing. So let's get started with this one. And I'm actually going to start with the inside first. I like to do that when I'm creating these kind of pop-up cards. I'm using a new die set from Concord and 9th that I'm excited about. It creates layered candles, and it does so pretty quickly. Now, this does have a coordinating stamp set available. I'm not using it today, but keep that in mind if you prefer to do stamping over die cutting. Off screen, I did a bunch of die cutting, and you can see all of that organized in the little trays at the top of the screen. I made each candle from 2 shades of the same color, so a lighter pool color and a darker pool color, as you see here. I then glued this onto a white candle, a solid white candle, so that I could add the flame at the top and keep the wick a white color. This is a fun process for me. I love to create little die cuts like this, but remember, if you prefer to stamp, you could do the stamped candles instead. So these are the color combinations I came up with, and now we're going to do some stamping on the inside of the card to match. This is the new Concord and 9th's Celebration Turnabout stamp. Now this is a great stamp that creates a confetti type background for a celebration card. If you've never used a turnabout stamp, they're super fun. You can stamp them up to 4 times and rotating each time to create a colorful background. Now I'll do all 4 turns, but keep in mind you could keep it simple by only stamping it once. I've demonstrated turnabout stamping many times in videos, but today I'm showing how to cover the inside of an entire card with turnabout stamping. Now a turnabout stamp comes with a guide, and that's what's laying on my desk. I'm removing the turnabout stamp itself from the packaging, and I'm laying it onto the guide, making sure the images on the stamp line up with the black printing on the guide. So you can see how it lines up there. Next, I'll take my Concord and 9th jig. This is an inexpensive tool, but if you want to make your own, I'll show you how in the video linked up here on the top right. Now this jig has an X imprinted on it in the background. You're going to line up that X on the jig with the X on your guide. So watch, the black X on the guide will line up with the engraved X on the jig. Super easy to line up. Then I will take this and put it into a stamping tool. I'm using my MISTI stamping tool, making sure the corner of the jig lines up in the corner of my MISTI. So I'll lay that down, keeping those X's lined up, close the door on the MISTI, and now I can remove that guide and save it for the next time I use this stamp set. Now my stamp is all set up to create the colorful background. Now I want to stamp all over the inside of a card. I'm actually starting with a bigger card than I need. This is 5.5 by 5.5 inches. The reason I'm going with bigger is I might as well take those extra stamped strips and use them for something else later. This will end up being a 5.5 by 4.25 inch card in the end. I'm using some temporary tape, this is Easy C tape, to make sure that the card lays flat on the jig, just to make sure my stamping turns out great. I don't think you need this much tape, but I did it. I'm an overthinker. That's just the way I roll. So now my card is attached to the jig, and we can do whatever stamping we want on here. I'm using a mix of different colors that match the cardstock I used on my candles. I tried to choose lighter versions of those colors so that this doesn't distract from the bright candles. Now when I stamp this, I'm not pressing real firm over the entire stamp. The reason is, notice there's a lot of background in this stamp, the empty space between the images. I get ink on those when I ink up with the ink pad. And I don't want that area to press down into the background, leaving an inked blob. So instead, I just ink up my stamp and I ink it up generously and then stamp it lightly, just pressing a little bit, mostly over the larger images. Then I stamp it again to make sure I get a good image because I am stamping lightly. So if you have a large image with lots of space in the background, I think it's best to stamp lightly and then double stamp, just so you get good results without any ink blobs. Now what I'm doing is every time after doing the stamping, I rotate the jig. So you probably saw me do that. I rotate it one turn and then ink and stamp with a different color. This forms that colorful background. So after stamping with the soft lilac color, I'll turn my jig and then I'll stamp it with a pool color. So this is how turnabouts work, and here I'm stamping it onto a folded card. Once I'm done with this, I'll remove the card from the jig and flip it over and do the exact same thing on the other side of the card. Now I'm not going to show all of the stamping on this side because it's exactly like we just did. When you're done with the turnabout stamping, you can remove the card from the jig, and now you'll have a 5.5 by 5.5 inch note card with stamping on the front and the back. Now all I'm going to do is turn the card inside out, so now the stamping is on the inside of the card, which I want for this design. I will also cut off the edges, so it is 5.5 by 4.25, and I can save those edge strips for another card. Now let's do the pop-up feature on the inside. For this, I'm using the new Concord and 9th pop-up bases die set. There are 3 dies, so you can do different sizes of pop-ups. Now this is a pretty inexpensive die set. It's only like $10, I think, and so it is a tool that can be used over and over again with other products you have. You could probably make your own pieces to look like this, but I found these really easy and something I could use in many ways. So I cut these from white cardstock, and you can see there are score lines. You just want to fold along those score lines and reinforce it with a bone folder or other tool to kind of flatten it. I did this from a lighter weight cardstock. This is 80-pound cardstock. I usually use 110. I like to use lighter weight cardstock whenever I have folded pop-up features like this. I just find it lays flatter and pops up nicer. But if you only have a heavier weight cardstock, you can definitely use that. So I have 3 of these ready to go, one small, medium, and large. Now it's time to add the candles, and I chose to use the small one first. Now on this piece, you can glue whatever you want on that flat side, the side opposite of where that little V notch is. Also, don't glue directly across from the point of the V because there's a score line there. You don't want to mess with that. So anything on these 2 little rectangle portions or panels on the top left and top right of this piece. So I'm gluing 3 candles on each side. You want the bottom of whatever you want to pop up to line up with the score line that goes right across the middle there. Very, very easy to do this. So you can glue different things to pop up, like a little scene. You could temporarily glue a gift card to pop up, anything. But for this card, we're going to do lots of candles. I suggest using something strong to adhere this, such as Gina K Connect liquid adhesive. I also thought it'd be fun to add little word bubbles with messages on the candles, so those pop up also. So let's make those. I used the Concord and 9th Say Thanks die set for this. Now there is a Say Thanks stamp set, which you see over on the left. That's another one of those turnabouts to create backgrounds. Let me show you what that ends up looking like when you stamp it. So you stamp it 4 times in 4 different colors, and you get a really fun thank you background. Now I'm not using the stamp set today, but I'm using the dies that go with it. So there are all these different size word bubbles. I'll use the large word bubble for a place to write my message, and the smaller ones to stamp little greetings inside to go on the candles. These little messages are from the Celebrations Turnabout that I showed you earlier. So I stamped Let's Celebrate, Wahoo, Oh Happy Day, and a few others. And I'll put some of these on the front of our card and some on the inside on the candles. Now we can add the pop-up feature to the inside of our card. I'm putting double-sided tape, strong double-sided tape, onto those 2 little flaps here next to that cut V. I recommend a 1/4-inch double-sided tape such as Lawn Fawn. That's definitely my favorite. I'm removing the release paper from one side, from the right side. Now I'm adhering this into my folded card, making sure the angle on the V lines up with the folded crease at the center of our note card. I'm going to show you this up close. Then you'll just press that down. So here's a closer look at it. See how the angle of the V, that lines up with the crease of the note card. Super, super easy to do. That's the hardest part, and it's easy, so don't worry. Now we're going to take this card and we're going to lay that down, and I'll fold it over, remove the release paper from the other side. So I've got this folded over. I'm just going to line up the candles, line up the folded piece. And now the adhesive is facing up, it's exposed, and I'll just close the card onto it. And that makes sure the other side is lined up. So that V is now gone. It's squished together there at the center of the card, at the folded line, and there we have our pop-up feature. On my next card example, I'll show you a slightly different way to assemble this so you could choose what might work best for you. Now notice when this is closed, there's not that much bulk to the card, which is one of the nice things about this pop-up design. Also, make sure your pop-up design is high enough in the inside that when you close the cards, the candles don't stick out the bottom. Okay, now I decided I wanted to add more candles to this for the fun pop-up feature. In fact, I'm adding the number of candles for the number of years for the girl that's going to receive this card. So you can customize your pop-up however you want. This time I'm using the medium-sized pop-up and adding more candles to it. Now that we have this finished, we can put the double-sided tape along the flap sticking out the bottom and now add it to our card. Now this time we need to be a little careful when we add it, but it's not too hard. I'm again starting by attaching the side on the right, making sure the angle of the V lines up with the score line at the center. Now this time, I'll remove the release paper from this other side. But if I close the card now, it would just stick to the other candles. So I just need to wrap it around the other candles. So I'll do it again here. I'm going to kind of fold it, wrap this around, and then press it all down. And that way, this pop-up feature will adhere to the other side, and everything will pop up fine. So there you have the pop-up, 2 pop-ups inside one card. Now again, my next example, I'll show an easier way to do that, and you can choose which would work well for you. Now in the inside, I also wanted to have that large word bubble with the word Hooray on it, and that's where I can write my personal message. Now that Hooray die is from the Concord and 9th Hip Hip Hooray coordinating die set. So the stamp set's on the left, and you can use those images to build a card front and kind of like a poster style card. And then there are the coordinating dies you can use with it or separately. I'm using the Hooray and the Amazing on this card. On the inside, I will add the word bubble that I cut earlier from the Say Thanks die set. I cut that from Simon Says Stamp Fog cardstock, which is a light gray. I then cut the Hooray from black glossy cardstock, and I'm gluing that to the top of the word bubble. Below that, I can write my personal message to the recipient. Next, I added those little word bubbles that I stamped earlier onto the candles, so those pop up also. I do recommend using strong adhesive whenever assembling these little pop-ups because you want everything to stay in place. I'm using Gina K Connect liquid adhesive. Okay, so now the inside of our card is ready. It's time to do the outside. I like to do the inside first, so I kind of set the theme, that's the focal point, and then do the outside and keep it a little simpler. Now for this, I'm using a new Concord and 9th birthday stamp set. This is the birthday scoop set. I'll be using just the happy birthday message, the large one that you build together. But keep in mind there are really cute little ice cream and cupcakes that you can assemble with this set. Not using that today, but they're really fun, and I plan to add that as a pop-up in a future card. I have a piece of white cardstock here that is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. I'll trim it down to be a little bit smaller later on. Now I thought it'd be fun to ink up these letters in different colors, so I get a multicolored sentiment. This stamp is actually 2 parts. One stamps these letters and the other stamps the other. So it's really easy to do different letters in different colors. I chose colors of ink that match the inside of my card. Now you can see I'm just inking up some of the letters each time and stamping them. That way I can add more color to it. This time I'm inking up the other letters with a bubblegum color from Lawn Fawn and stamping those. So think of different greetings that you could do different letters, different colors, just by doing partial inking. You could also do masking, but this is a lot easier. Now I'm coming in with the second image. You can see how it lines up easily. And we'll do some of these in a pool color and some of them in an orange color. Whenever you get a new stamp, I do recommend prepping it by wiping it with a dry cloth. That allows the ink to kind of take to the stamp a bit better and give better stamped results. So there I used sea glass for some of the letters, and then for the last ones it was easier to rotate my MISTI around, and I used a yellow color for this. So I'm able to create a sentiment that's large in different colors that match the inside of the card, and it didn't take long to do it all. In this case, I used a piece of scrap cardstock to mask off one of the letters as I did my inking. Now off screen, I added a bit more to the front panel. I'll show you that in a moment. And I trimmed it down to be about 4 by 5 1/4, and I'm gluing that to the front of our pop-up card. So I just found it easier to assemble this and then glue it on, but you could have done the front first and then assembled the inside if you wanted. Okay, so here is the completed card. When you take it out of the envelope, you have the little scene on front with our multicolor greeting. You can see I added some speech bubbles, some iridescent stars, and a little bit of confetti from the Celebrations Turnabout stamp set. Then when you open the card, you have that fun candle pop-up scene. So this card can be put on display just by laying it flat on a shelf, and there is a spot there to write your personal message. I really feel like these candles work great for a birthday pop-up card, but you could use whatever you have on hand to create a pop-up. Could be little critters, it could be a floral bouquet, anything that you want that you can attach to those little flaps on the pop-up base die cuts. Before we move on to another pop-up card example, I wanted to share with you a bonus card, and this uses the same birthday candle dies. I just liked them so much, had everything out, so I decided to make this flat card also. In addition to the die-cut candles, I thought I'd do a tone-on-tone, white-on-white background, and I used this new die from Fawn called the Quilted Heart Backdrop die. For this card, I'm using the one on the right. That's the portrait version. The one on the left is the landscape version, and I'll use that on a card later in this video. I just thought this pattern was fun, so I cut it from white cardstock and glued it onto a white top-folded 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch note card. On top of that, I glued a rainbow of candles. These were assembled just like I showed you earlier. I also added 3 little die cut and stamped banners for the sentiment. You'll see what that's from in my next card example. I also added gold Nuvo shimmer pen to the flames so there would be a gold sparkle to them. I just wanted to share this bonus because I think these candles are really fun. I think you can change the number of them up. You can stamp a greeting along a candle or use whatever colors you want for a recipient. Okay, now it's time to do another pop-up card example. This one has some sentiments arranged on the front. I'll share with you some tips about that. And then when you open it, there is a fun scene, all made from little die cuts. Now, I like to assemble little die cuts, but you could instead use little stamped images here if you prefer. I chose to use the new Concord and 9th Downtown Stacks die set and coordinating stamp set. I love die sets like this. Concord and 9th came out with a house die set, kind of like this. I'll link to a video showing that on the top right here. And this would coordinate and work well with the houses also. I love a city scene, and there are many different ways you can assemble these. I like that they also included the solid rectangle dies, so you could create a backing for the buildings so that the white shows through the windows instead of it being see-through. I just love all the added pieces here. The die set also includes this die that cuts 3 banners, and what's neat is it lines up with the stamp set. So you can cut 3 banners with greetings that you can use together or separately. This is what I used on the candles on my last card. I'll also be using it on this pop-up card too. This time I decided to start with the outside of the card. You can choose whatever works for you. I thought it'd be fun to use a bunch of different stamps and die cuts from different sets, use them together creatively to create a longer message. So over here on the left, I have the Concord and 9th Buds and Blossoms stamp set. There's a greeting at the top that says, "You're so sweet." I just cut off the word sweet, so I have "you're so." I also have the amazing die that is from that Yay coordinating die set that I showed you earlier. I have this older So Happy from Concord and Ninth, where I chose the sentiment, I wish I could hug, and also the cursive U. It's really fun to go through old stamp sets and mix and match greetings together to create a new message. It also works really well for a simple card design, especially on the front of a card like I'm doing today. From the buds and blossoms, I also chose that large friend word. Another thing fun about this is you're mixing and matching different styles of words, so it really creates a lot of interest. So I stamped all of these greetings onto the front of a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch note card. I did that off screen to save some time, but I also added the amazing word with black glitter cardstock. Now I'm using different heart dies from some of the different Concord and Ninth die sets to cut from colors of cardstock that will match the inside of our card. And I'm just arranging some little hearts around our sentiment to fill in some of the spaces. I also used the Lawn Fawn Skinny Hearts and Stars tag die set, you'll see that up there on the top right, to create some additional small heart die cuts. I really like to use die cut hearts and stars as accents on my cards. They don't add much bulk, and it's a great way to add pops of color. So there is the front of our card, very simple, so that we can have a fun pop-up scene inside. Off screen, I did a bunch of die cutting using the Concord and Ninth Downtown Stacks die set, and I die cut from lots of colorful pieces of scrap cardstock. I also assembled a bunch of buildings. I'm not going to show this whole process in the video because it's pretty boring to watch, but if you want to assemble a similar scene using the same dies, I do have photos of all of these cards on my blog, and you can check that out. I like that I'm able to piece together little different colors to create a colorful scene. I find this very therapeutic and something that I really enjoy doing. I did want to mention that this die set includes a lot of different ways you can arrange these buildings. There are different rooftops. There are little balconies you can add to the buildings. There's even tiny little park benches, a taxi, a car, even a little table with an umbrella over it. So I assembled a bunch of little buildings here. I even did extras for the bonus card I'll show you in a bit. This time I decided to add the pop-up bases inside of the card first. So I have my pop-up bases here, and I'm putting that double-sided tape on the two flaps next to the little V-cut notch. I will then add this into our card. Again, I'm lining up the right side of the V, their diagonal line, with the crease in my card. So let me show you that up close so you can see it again. See how that diagonal lines up with the crease inside of the card. I will then fold this over. There's adhesive exposed on that flap. I just press the card down, and now my pop-up base is added. This time I want 3 pop-up bases inside of my card. So I'm putting another one right below it and then a one below that. So I use the small for the top one and the bottom one, and the medium size pop-up for the middle one. So now we have all of our pop-up bases included. You want to really press that down to make sure they stay. Now I can add all of our little buildings to the portion that's popping up. So on my first example, I added the candles first to the pop-up bases and then glued it to the inside of the card. This time I'm adding our pop-up die cuts after. I find this easier, but if you prefer to assemble your little scene flat and then add it, it's up to you. So I'm just gluing different buildings on here. Some of the buildings I even cut shorter so that I had different heights to the buildings. All of it is glued to those little flaps. The sky is the limit here. The only thing you want to do is make sure you close it often and make sure none of your die cuts are sticking out the bottom or sides of the cards when it's folded down. But I never had that happen, but I still checked often to be sure. So now on this front little pop-up base, I'm adding some smaller things. I have some smaller buildings, little trees, a park bench. I also have some little bushes and the little umbrella and chairs. So I'm doing a 3-panel scene here, which is really fun to do. But if you want to keep it simple, you could just do one. I also used the little banner die and stamp that's in the sets to create this just a note to say I miss you. So I stamped it first, used the coordinating die to cut it out, and now I have these 3 banners that I'll glue to connect 2 buildings. I think that's a fun way to add more to your sentiment. We stamped some on the outside, and now we have some on the pop-up in the inside. So you can do any scene you want on those pop-ups. Let's take a look at the completed card, not too much bulk to it. And then when you take it out, you have this fun message on the front that is just assembled from different stamp sets, really extending the use you get from your sets. Then when you open it up, you have the fun scene inside with the additional miss you sentiment. There's plenty of room to write a personal message on the flat part of the card. This does lay flat so you can have your pop-up scene on display. One tip I wanted to share is if you want to keep the dimension or bulk of this down, try using lighter weight cardstocks. I love Concord and Ninth's colored cardstocks because they're a little bit lighter weight than the other color cardstocks I use, which makes it great for layering, and the colors are beautiful. So there we have our second pop-up card. Now, just like last time, I had so much fun with the little town buildings that I decided to do a bonus card. Again, this isn't pop-up, but just a fun, colorful rainbow card. I used the landscape version of that quilted heart backdrop die from Lawn Fawn that I showed you earlier. I cut that from white cardstock and put it onto a white note card that is 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. Now, the clouds are from the Sunny Studio Puffy Cloud die set. It's an older one that I use often. Then the buildings, the sentiments, everything else is from the Downtown Stack stamp set and die set from Concord and Ninth. Look at the cute little park bench, little umbrella and chairs, the cars. So many ways you could use this creatively. It would be fun to decorate this for a Christmas scene also. All right, there you have it. Some fun ways to create pop-up cards. Just a nice surprise for your recipient. If you are interested in the supplies I use, I always link that below in my YouTube description. I do encourage you to go over to my blog though. I have photos of all of these cards and you can bookmark them to refer to later if you want. Now at the end here, I'll link to a couple other related videos that you might like. I am so thankful you spent this time with me. I hope you'll give this a try and we'll see you soon.